We've got like the other Stacy made it. So we have all three Stacys. You guys do not have to come on camera with me. And the first part of this is going to be something I recorded, and it's long. So we're definitely going to run over our 1 hour allotment. But make sure you have someplace to jot down questions as they come up. And then I will answer them live. And if I can't answer them, I have my Stacy's as backup. Welcome to my session. Today we will be discussing the CSJ Food List Refresh. My name is Stacy Griffith, and I am the owner of the Crab Street Journal and the president of the Land Hermit Crab Owners Society. Be sure to have a pen and a piece of paper ready so that you can take some notes along the way and then jot down any questions that you have so that you can ask them at the end. So the reason for this session and the food list behind it is that I was motivated by a desire for a better understanding of our safe and unsafe food lists. So I started working on updating the existing food lists and basically educating me about the why behind things are safe or not safe. Today's topics include the origin of the first food list, pros and cons of that list, goal of the new list, who this list is for, why it's not a perfect solution, and then we'll do some really just fun trivia questions, and then we'll have our question and answer session. And while we're doing the question and answers, I'll do some practice searches and show you the database live and show you how to search and look things up. So our current list goes all the way back to 1999. In 1999, the Hermes Yahoo group was launched with little known about the nutritional needs of hermit crabs. Lisa Losecki found the nutritional chart that we use today and shared it as a basis for our feeding. This chart gives us the information to build a nutritionally complete feeding plan, but it doesn't delve into toxicity. And again, there was no data or research specifically for hermit crabs. So the group adopted two feeding lists, one that was created for birds and one that was created for turtles, to use as a guideline for determining safety. Carrie Campbell began to expand on these lists and create some food lists, feeding plans, and nutritional guides for the Crab Street Journal. So there are pros and cons to the existing lists. The upside is this was a very conservative list with little to no risk. The downside is the list can eliminate many food items that are entirely safe and maybe part of wild hermit crabs environments. The list is biased towards food found in North America, while hermit crab habitats are located in the equatorial zone all around the world. The goals of the new list. First of all, to streamline. The existing safe foods list, which is the Google Doc that we share with everyone, will not be replaced. Any redundant articles on CSJ will be retired. If they still have valuable information in them, I've put that into the master feeding guide where everything is now being compiled. Definition, to establish a more accurate method for determining toxicity. Expand the list to add greater variety. Empower owners to make their own determination regarding toxicity. This new list was meant to give owners more options and establish safe parameters for owners who wanted to add an extra level of variety to their feeding routine. This is not a statement that you, as an owner, should experiment with new foods or disregard the existing safe food list. Most owners are content to feed from the known safe list, and there's no compelling reason to stray from it. The Lycos team is occasionally asked about feeding something that is not on the list. This is a significant burden to place on the team because, as you will learn in the following slides, this is not a simple task. I spent a year working on this list and collaborating with Courtney Carr and Stacy May. I hope that I've provided enough information that you can now conduct your own research and come to a reasonable decision about potential new food items. The new list is imperfect. Researching toxicity studies for crustaceans is challenging. It is time-consuming and at times exceeds my understanding of the subject matter. I have, to the best of my ability, aimed to provide you with the base of information on which you can make a more informed decision. So here's a brief outline of my process. So I start out by searching for academic papers, and I do that on Google Scholar. If you need some help on how to effectively and accurately search for academic papers online, go to the CrabCon YouTube channel and look for Courtney Carr's presentation from 2020, and she'll teach you how to do this effectively and accurately. So once you get on Google Scholar, some of the search parameters you want to try, starting is crustacean toxicity and then the scientific name of whatever item you're wanting to know about. Brine shrimp lethality test and the scientific name is another search that you can try. And then next, the third one is insecticidal activity and then the scientific name. Once you've done all of those and read through the various papers and determined whether or not they apply to crustaceans or crabs, then you can do another search. And I typically do this one on Google first and then kind of narrow it down going back to Google Scholar. So search for the words toxic principle followed by the scientific name of what you're researching. And that will come back and tell you, for example, that something like nightshades, the nightshade family and the Solacea family contain alkaloids. And that is considered the toxic principle in those plants. Then you can go back and repeat those other searches with that toxic principle in place of the scientific name. So you would do crustacean toxicity and alkaloids, for example. Brine shrimp lethality test, alkaloids. Insecticidal activity, alkaloids. That's just the alkaloids one is easy for me to remember. So that's a good jumping off point for where to start your search process. So there's gaps in the process, obviously. I have not found any studies devoted to hermit crabs, marine or land, specifically relating to food toxicity. So we're forced to rely on the results for brine shrimp, lobster, crayfish instead. The LC50 value is the lethal concentration that kills 50% of the test subject. Typically brine shrimp or Daphnia is what I'm looking for, both crustaceans. Sometimes that value was not clearly stated or I could not locate the reference paper that did state it. Methods for extracting from the plant and tree varied. The solvents sometimes varied. And in those studies where they compared the different extraction methods and the different solvents, sometimes the results were a little bit different and sometimes they were really different. So I would like to read to you a little bit from the book Walking Sideways by Judith Weiss. And her book is part of CrabCon again this year, and she's presenting again this year, and she always brings us something good. So I highly recommend buying her book. So regarding toxic metals, metals are a byproduct of industrial processes and include mercury, cadmium, silver, lead, copper, chromium, arsenic, and zinc. They concentrate in bottom sediments and are taken up into animals via food, gills, or absorption from the water, and can be toxic even at low concentrations. Crabs and other animals have ways of dealing with metals if the concentrations aren't too great. And then the second excerpt is, there are limits, however, to how much metal can be dealt with, and as more accumulates in the animal, toxic effects occur. At the levels far below the concentrations that can cause death, Metals can affect the sensitive chemoreceptors on the antennules, which impairs the ability to detect odors, alter oxygen consumption, retard limb regeneration and molting, impair color change, and alter behavior. Effects are more severe at low salinity and are especially detrimental at early life stages, such as larvae, whose development and metamorphosis is impaired at very low metal levels. And then the final entry I have here is that some animals have built up an immunity to specific toxins in their specific habitat via long-term exposure. And one case is a case of some elk out in Wyoming, and I'm just going to quote this article from the U.S. Forest Service. The title of the article is "Lichens, Do You Know?" Another poisonous lichen, Parmelia molluscula, also known as ground lichen, was determined to be the cause of death for 300 elk in Wyoming in 2004. Elk visiting from Colorado ate this lichen, which caused tissue decay and eventually death. The native elk were not affected simply because their immune systems were already equipped to deal with this toxic lichen. This is another example of wildlife and plant life evolving with each other. So even if we do find something that is considered non-toxic to, say, a marine crab, is it non-toxic to them because it's something that they've been exposed to in the ocean over time and they've built up an immunity, where our land crabs would not have been exposed to that necessarily once they left the water and would have not had the opportunity to build up the immunity? Another unanswered question. The brine shrimp lethality bioassay is a simple, high-throughput cytotoxicity test of bioactive chemicals. It is based on the killing ability of test compounds on a simple zoological organism, brine shrimp, also known as Artemia salina. This assay was first proposed by Michael et al. And further developed by several groups. The brine shrimp lethality bioassay is widely used in the evaluation of toxicity of heavy metals, pesticides, medicines, especially natural plant extracts, and etc. This method determines the LC50 value of the test compound. This is the concentration that kills 50% of the brine shrimp or the Daphnia or whatever else they're testing for in that sample. From this point, researchers may go on to test how lower concentrations affect growth, molting, and motor function. This method is not perfect either. One important aspect of this assay is that the solvent used in this assay may give false positive signals due to the toxicity of the solvent itself. It has been well known that some organic solvents and detergents have high cytotoxicity in vivo. A systematic study on how high concentration of solvent affects the results from brine shrimp lethality bioassay and guidance for maximum working concentration of solvents is needed. The article published in this issue, Interference from Ordinarily Used Solvents in the Outcomes of a Salinity Lethality Test, fills this gap very well. In this study, the authors tested the solvent toxicity effect on brine shrimp experimentally. This is a very significant study. The authors concluded that dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, is a safer solvent in brine shrimp lethality bioassay, and the maximum working concentration of solvents such as DMSO, methanol, and tween 20 was suggested. And if you want to read more from that paper, I've got the citation there, and then I'll drop it into chat for you also. When looking at BSLT results, this is the basic chart and the accepted parameters. A strong toxicity is indicated by any value less than 100, and this is micrograms per milliliter. Moderate toxicity is from 100 to 500. Weak toxicity is 500 to 1,000. Non-toxic is anything greater than 1,000. And again, the concentrations are noted as micrograms per milliliter. 1 gram equals 1 million micrograms. Concentration may also be listed as parts per million. It is used to conveniently express very small concentrations of a compound, such as contaminants in water. So bear that in mind, because you're going to see where I was able to find these exact values. They are in the database, and so you will see these actual LC50 numbers show up. So let's talk about naturally occurring insecticidal activity. After conducting my search for BSLT results, I move on to researching for insecticidal activity of the test compound. And I want to read another quote to you from Walking Sideways by Judith Weiss regarding pesticides. As with metals, crabs have a way of coping with pesticides. Enzymes can be made to detoxify them, but these defenses are overcome as levels increase. Malathion, the most commonly used organophosphate insecticide, slows down larval development by delaying molting. Temempos, abate, and other pesticides affect the nervous system and behavior, making crabs more susceptible to predators. Unfortunately for crabs, crustacean biology is very similar to insects, and pesticides such as diflubenzuron, dimilin, a chitin synthesis inhibitor, interfere with the molt cycle of crabs, particularly of larvae that have to molt frequently. Methoprene, a juvenile hormone analog designed to prevent insects from maturing and reproducing, is unsurprisingly toxic to larval crabs. And then it's not as simple as this is clearly safe and this is clearly unsafe. So you want to pay close attention to the notes section on your search results when using our databases. There are some families of plants that have a large number of family members that are natural and that produce natural insecticides. There are some plants or trees that have a mix of safe and unsafe parts. One example is the prunus species. In this species of tree, the fruit itself is the only part that's safe. In some vegetable crops, only the produce part of the plant is the safe part. Again, like just the fruit of that plant. So the eggplant is safe, but the plant it grows on is not. Some species of arthropods have evolved to feed on plants that are toxic to most other insects. And then we have bioaccumulation. And bioaccumulation can make a plant that is safe become unsafe by taking up heavy metals from the soil. So they accumulate those heavy metals out of the soil. It's good for the soil because they're cleaning the soil, but if you feed that to your crabs and it has a really high level of heavy metals in it, there's a risk of killing them from that. You don't know what the level is or what it's taken up from the ground sometimes. Red clover is safe as a plant, but it's prone to a specific kind of fungus. I'm not sure if the fungus is harmful to crabs, another unanswered question. The essential oil from pine trees is considered a natural and strong insecticide. Dried pine wood seems to be harmless. Mary and others have used dried wood in their crab habitat without any long-term issues. Fresh wood with a strong pine scent should be avoided, in my opinion. And then here's a fun example from 1968 titled Studies on the Fauna of Curaçao and Other Caribbean Islands on the Ecology of Cenobita clypeus in Curaçao by DeWild. Quote, in Curaçao, the food of Cenobita comprises fruits, berries, seeds, or germinating plants, whatever is to be found in the field. In some places, large concentrations of animals are to be found, especially under the fruit trees in small orchards. All kinds of wild fruit. For example, cactus fruits or the apples of the manchil tree, which are poisonous to most animals, are taken eagerly. So now they only observe these crabs for a short time. So there is no documentation about the long-term effects of eating these poisonous manchil apples. And there's no indication if the crabs ate them once and then didn't return for multiple days to eat them again, or were they feeding on them every single day. So while that's really interesting information that they can at least eat them at least once without being harmed, is it just the crabs on that island who live around them, and our crabs who are now pets would not be able to consume those safely? More unanswered questions. I'm posing more than I'm solving, I think. This chart demonstrates plant families and the number of plants in that family that demonstrate natural insecticidal activity. Lamiacea is the number one, and many of the plants in that family are aromatic in all parts, including widely used herbs like basil, mint, rosemary, sage, savory, marjoram, oregano, hyssop, thyme, lavender, perilla, as well as other medicinal herbs such as catnip, salvia, bee balm, wild daga, and oriental motherwort. Number 2 is Fabaceae or Leguminosae. I've tried this 4 times and not said that correctly once. Commonly known as the legume, pea, or bean family. Beans contain lectins, and those lectins are phytohemagglutinin, or PHA for short, or they contain cytogenic glycosides such as linamarin. Beans can be made safe by cooking, avoiding feeding the plant parts. PHA in uncooked beans, especially kidney beans, are poisonous to animals and humans. PHA is also known to be an insecticide. PHA in beans is deactivated and reduced to safe levels by as little as 10 minutes of boiling. Lima beans contain linamarin, a cytogenic glucoside. The level of PHA in all varieties is not known. The third family is Asteraceae, and the Asteraceae family is commonly referred to as the aster, daisy, composite, or sunflower family. Unsafe species in this family are feverfew, groundsel, plucaeus, Shasta daisy. Several other species are categorized as caution. In the Asteraceae family, Canada goldenrod is a bioaccumulator of lead and zinc. Fourth is Apiaceae, or the umbelliferae, and that is mostly aromatic flowering plants named after the type genus Apium. This family also includes Ajoine, Angelica, Anise, Asafoetida, caraway, carrot, celery, chervil, coriander, cumin, dill, fennel, lovage, cow parsley, parsnip, and sea holly. And the fifth family is Solanaceae, or nightshades. Many members of the family contain potent alkaloids, and some are toxic, but many, including tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, bell, and chili peppers, are used as food. You eat the fruit, but not the plant. Some other important members of Solanaceae include a number of ornamental plants such as petunia, brawalia, Lysianthes, and sources of psychoactive alkaloids, Datura mandragora, and Atropa belladonna, which is deadly nightshade. Certain species are widely known for their medicinal uses, their psychotropic effects, and for being poisonous. This chart indicates the LC50 and LD50 of 28 essential oils. The LD50 column is showing contact toxicity, where the compound is put directly on the test subject, and the LC50 column is showing for fumigation or inhalation, so a spray or a mist, and this was demonstrating toxicity against maize weevils. Now, remembering that anything that was 0 to 100 was considered strongly toxic. So cinnamon is 0.04. We don't actually get down to 1 microgram until we get down to citronella. So all of these show a really high toxicity. And then now here, what does this mean? This is another example of, I don't know. Phenyl, it just says greater than 3.59. Does that mean it's 5 or 5,000? I don't know. So then let's look at fumigation toxicity. We've got 14, 18, 52, 96 here for E. radiata. Rosemary is at 107 to 133. And you may have seen some of these spices on the existing list, especially the foraging guide, and it'll say like it's toxic with an asterisk, and it's only the blossom of the plant that is safe. So it's because the blossom must not contain as much of the essential oil as the plant does, because they can safely eat those blossoms. LC stands for lethal concentration. The LC values usually refer to the concentration of a chemical in the air, but environmental studies, it can also mean the concentration of a chemical in water. LD stands for lethal dose. LD50 is the amount of material given all at once, which causes the death of 50% of the test animals. The LD50 is one way to measure short-term poisoning potential or acute toxicity of a material. This chart indicates the LC50 and LC90 of essential oils against nematodes. And they are abbreviated here in the chart, but down below it tells you which one is which. So we see some slightly different numbers here. So in 24 hours, it took a concentration of 353.20 micrograms to kill half. But in 48 hours, the concentration needed to kill 50 dropped down to 79. And then in 72 hours, the concentration dropped down to only 39 micrograms per milliliter needed to kill half of them. So sometimes the studies had time periods like that, not always. I went by kind of a general look. Like this one here was over 1,000, close to 1,000. These were all over 1,000 MTEO. That is Eucalyptus citriodora. So the essential oil from that particular plant shows that it is not really terribly toxic compared to the other ones. There's no reason for you to be giving them the essential oils of that particular plant, but there are some out there that are okay. What is MREO? Let's look at that one. MREO is Symphopogon nardus. I don't know what that is. This chart indicates the toxicity of extracts of wild mushrooms. And the two I've highlighted here are Amanita phalloides, commonly known as the death cap. And you can see that we've got a value of 68.99 and 22.60. So those are considered toxic. The extracts of those, of course, they're toxic to pretty much everybody, right? So the master list, not publishing my master spreadsheet online. It is the source for the new databases on CSJ. That's what's on the back end running those databases. When you're using the master list to search, searching by the scientific name will be more accurate than using the common name. And if you encounter issues, you can email me at crabtreejournal@gmail.com. Some of the plants have dozens of common names, and they can vary by what part of the world you're in. So the scientific name will never change. That's why I put in as many of the common names as I could, but like some of them literally had a dozen. So what I know it as might not be what you know it as. So we're always going to need the scientific name to know for sure. This is just a sample of what my spreadsheet looks like. This is part of the plant tab, and it has 341 entries on it, just to give you an idea of how much content is in this database. And because I'm an overachiever, I decided to also add in some animal protein sources and invertebrates. Those sections are not as detailed because I can't like research every single insect on the planet. I just can't. By the end of my session, you should hopefully be able to make your own determination about things like that. But I've even got it color coded for myself, and I can easily filter and search for things. I like spreadsheets, can you tell? All the entries in the database will be categorized in one of these categories. Safe, being no reported toxicity to any animal, including humans. Mixed, some parts indicate toxicity to at least one animal, while other parts are safe. Toxicity in humans or mammals does not guarantee toxicity or non-toxicity in crustaceans. Unknown, most or all of the parts are toxic to animals or humans, but no data exists on toxicity to crustaceans. Caution, toxicity to crustaceans has been demonstrated in concentrated extractions. This does not necessarily indicate toxicity in the natural state, as it would be consumed by the hermit crabs. This is especially true of items that indicate toxicity at high concentrations. These items are safe in their natural state, in our opinion, but there is no research to back that opinion, so these items will remain in the caution category, and these items are used at your own risk. The unsafe category demonstrated toxicity to insects or crustaceans in very low concentrations or natural state. So these are my interpretations based on my findings or lack thereof. And again, you can find the database that you're going to search on crabstreetjournal.org, and then use the search box and look for the feeding guide. There are 5 databases available. So some of them are grouped together because I could only do 5 with the free program. So you want to choose which database you want to search, enter one search item, preferably the scientific name, and then hit search, and it will come up with a chart with your results. It'll tell you what category it is. So we see mixed. It was eggplant is the common name. Here are my notes. Eggplant is safe. The plant is not. Soline is toxic in high concentrations to humans and mammals. Soline has toxicity with an LC50 value of 17.97 micrograms per millimeter by brine shrimp lethality test method. Solanine is considered as highly toxic because it has an LC50 value of less than 30. Animals affected: humans, dogs, cats, livestock, and brine shrimp. Then we've got the scientific name, Solanum melangina. It's so small I can't read it. My reference, and then under toxic principle, we've got solanine, and then you can hit view details, and it basically shows you the same thing. I did notice on CSJ when you pull this up, the website is kind of cutting it off over here by toxic principle, so you might have to zoom out your browser if you want to see that. The databases available are the algae, sea vegetables, moss and lichens, the crops and spices, animal proteins and invertebrates, trees, plants. Other considerations when we talk about toxicity, safe versus unsafe. Wild hermit crabs have a foraging mechanism that serves as a protection from poisoning themselves. Wild hermit crabs will avoid eating foods they've recently eaten. This is not true of our pet hermit crabs in captivity. Mine will eat green sand every single day. They will eat worm castings every single day. Are they losing their ability to avoid the potential toxins? Is this a learned behavior or instinct? Do captive bred babies have the same avoidance mechanism, or is it learned from other crabs? Like, are they born with it, or did they learn it? There's a study called The Avoidance of Recently Eaten Foods by Land Hermit Crab, Cenobita compressus, and the author is Thacker, where he talks about how the wild crabs would not eat from the same piles of food 2 nights in a row in the wild. And they determined that was their foraging mechanism to protect themselves, because they are scavengers eating like the worst of the worst stuff on the beach, that they don't poison themselves. In my early days, when I was offering a new food to my crabs, I had like a 3 strike and you're out rule. I would offer it the first time all by itself. We don't hide new foods in something else and try to trick the crabs into eating it. That's not a good idea. So they got the new food in a bowl by itself and some other good foods in the tank elsewhere. If they turned it down the first time, I took it out the next day, and I would wait at least a month, but some period of time, sometimes longer, and then offer it again in the same manner, all by itself, unmasked, unadulterated, just as it is. If they overlooked it, ignored it completely that time, I pulled it back out again, waited one more lapse of time, another month or 6 months, and tried it again. At that point, if they have ignored it 3 times, they're telling me that they don't want this food, and so then I stop trying. Another example of confusing research is microcystins are toxic to aquatic fauna. Yet one study indicates that crayfish larvae are unaffected by it. This paper describes the accumulation and depuration of microcystins from a microcystin and non-microcystin producing strain of Microcystis aeruginosa on the survivorship, growth, and nutritional status of P. clarkii. Crayfish larvae were resistant to cyanobacteria and their toxins, surviving cyanobacteria densities during acute exposure. Juvenile crayfish tolerated toxic cyanobacteria better than non-toxic ones. And the study that is from is called The Impact of a Toxic and Non-Toxic Strain of Microcystis aeruginosa on the Crayfish Procambarus clarkii. So yeah, that's crazy. Something that is known to be toxic to all other aquatic fauna, the crayfish seemed like they were immune to it. Is that another example, like going back to the elk, where just over time they've become immune to it? Overexposure, generations and generations? Don't know. In conclusion, the current food list will not go away. Several new databases are now available on CSJ, 5 actually. Those databases are still in beta testing, so if you find mistakes, let me know. And when you're performing your own research, you're going to determine the scientific name, search for the toxic principle, search for some BSLT results, search for insecticidal activity, and then identify what part of the plants were tested. If a plant or tree is not on the list, you will now have the search parameters to find the answer on your own. The Lycos Facebook team will not search for you or provide a yes or no answer regarding items that are not on the list. At this point, it will be up to you to make the decision to feed or not. And again, if you do some research and you come up with a solid answer, email me your findings along with your supporting research and I'll add it to our database. And together we'll learn and grow. Risk versus reward. So while it can be fun to feed something new and weird, the first thing to consider is this. Is the payoff worth the risk? In other words, what is the perceived benefit of feeding this item, and can it be safely obtained through another known safe food item? I personally tend to err on the side of caution unless there's a compelling risk or a compelling reason to take a risk with my hermit crabs, and I cannot think of any such compelling reason. So my disclaimer is, if you venture into experimenting with the categories of unknown, caution, and unsafe, you are assuming all risk for the outcome. And if all of this makes your brain hurt, let's talk about some worry-free feeding. A must-have for your collection is fresh and foraged foods for land hermit crabs. This is produced by Stacy May of My Hungry Hermit, and it's an easy to use and understand food list. It comes in hardback or spiral bound. The spiral bound, well, even the hardback is small enough that you could put it, if you have a good sized purse, you can put it in there. But the spiral bound is like meant to be on the go. You're at the grocery store, and she makes it so easy because the pink pages, the hot pink pages, are the danger zone. Don't feed anything in those pages. The other white pages are all safe items, and then she's got this adorable icon key that will show you if something needs to be boiled, or if it needs to be baked, or certain additional information required when preparing this kind of notes. And this is part of what she was working on when I started this list, so we had a lot of overlap. So we had a lot of good talks about toxicity and cyanogenic glycosides. All right, so we've got through all of the food stuff. So let's take a few minutes and just do some fun questions together. I'm going to try to give you about 10 seconds on each slide to type your answer in chat really quick. But if you don't want to put it in chat, you can just write it down on a piece of paper and play along if you want. There is no prize at the end. True or false? Citrus is unsafe. Both? So we used to believe that citrus was completely unsafe, like that was in the early days, but the fruit of the citrus tree is safe. Hermit crabs might not eat the sour ones like lemon or grapefruit, but oranges, tangerines, blood oranges, they'll eat. In the citrus family, the peel, the wood, the bark, the leaves, and the blossoms contain essential oils which are frequently used as natural insecticides. There's some examples in this slide. Linalool being toxic to brine shrimp, psoralens toxic to nematodes, neroli oil from the bitter orange, and I have hundreds and hundreds of research papers if you'd like to see them, and some of them cover the citrus topic. Rice is safe. No. Yes. Yes if washed and cooked. Rice is safe to serve after being rinsed well or cooked. Rice contains arsenic. I didn't know that until a few years ago. So even when you're eating it, it should be rinsed really well before you cook it. And in crabs, feed in moderation when you're feeding to your crabs. They can have it, but it needs to be rinsed or cooked, and then not something that they're eating as a staple food. Honey is a cure-all. Honey has no magical healing properties. Honey cannot cure an illness or heal physical damage. Honey can be used in situations where a bit of an energy boost may help a crab that is lethargic, or it might stimulate their appetite if they're not eating well. Honey should still always be used in moderation and only served in small quantities, so that the honey does not get transferred onto the crab's body, its shell, or inside the shell. If honey were to get into the gills or coat the abdominal lung, it would effectively suffocate the crab. So we want to just see small drops. And if you can mix it with something else or dribble it over something else, that's even safer. All foods must be organic. Ten seconds feels like a long time when you're just staring at the clock, but I got to remember that you guys all have to hear me, think, type, send. I don't want to rush you, but I don't want to run out of time either. No, organic is not required, because organic does not mean it's free of chemicals. That is a common misconception. For example, on the list of allowed chemicals in organic gardening and farming, copper sulfate's on the allowed list. What is copper sulfate? Copper sulfate is an inorganic compound that combines sulfur with copper. It can kill bacteria, algae, roots, plants, snails, and fungi. The toxicity of copper sulfate depends on the copper content. Copper is an essential mineral. It can be found in the environment, foods, and water. Copper sulfate has been registered for use in pesticide products in the United States since 1956. And you can view the list of allowed and prohibited substances at that link below, and I'll try to remember to drop that in the chat. Copper sulfate is one of the items that we commonly see in commercial hermit crab food. Hermit crabs prefer fresh fruits and vegetables. Yes or no? Not necessarily. Wild hermit crabs are scavengers, keeping the beach and coastal forests clean. Most of the fruit that they encounter is overly ripe. It's fallen off the tree, it's been laying on the sand a little bit. So if you're offering fresh fruits and vegetables and not having much success with them, try slightly overripe instead. Like for me, if I buy fruits and vegetables and I forget to eat them and I pull out the veggie drawer and they're like wrinkled, perfect for the crabs. Avoid feeding moldy food. Not safe. Fruits especially may attract fruit flies, and that can be really problematic in some places. So feeding dehydrated and powdered fruits and vegetables is perfectly acceptable also. What is the scientific genus name for land hermit crabs? Is it Crew, Cenobita, or Clypeus? The answer is Cenobita. Their scientific classification, starting at the kingdom, is Animalia, phylum Arthropoda, subphylum Crustacea, class Malacostraca, order Decapoda, infraorder Animura, family is Cenobitidae, which includes two species, Virgus latro, the coconut crab, and land hermit crabs, Cenobita, which are genus Cenobita. Arthropoda is the phylum that our crabs share with insects. Why are hermit crabs classified as a decapod crustacean? Is it because they live in discarded shells? Is it because they live for decades? Is it because they have 10 appendages? It's because they have 10 appendages. Can you list them for me in chat? What we're looking at here is a male hermit crab, and this picture was sent to me to show me specifically this particular species is the only one we know of that has asymmetrical sex tubes. Those are the male sex tubes down near the abdomen, and you'll see one of them is very long and sort of curved over, and then the other one is much more what we expect based on what the other males of other species show for sex tubes. Dr. Tudge talked about this last year at CrabCon. So this particular species has this asymmetrical long sex tube, and nobody knows why. All right, we have 5 pairs of matching appendages to make 10 appendages in total. The first pair would be the pinchers or the chelipeds. Then we've got the first set of walking legs, then the second set of walking legs. Those are all visible all the time outside of the shell for the most part. Then inside the shell, there are 2 pairs, set number 4 and 5, of the little alien arms that help hold the shell. One set has the little claws on it that helps hold the shell, and then the other one are primarily used for grooming. They have the little bristles on them, and the crabs will run those through their gill chamber and stuff to clean them. So 5 pairs gives us 10 appendages for decapod. What is your hermit crab doing when it digs a burrow and sheds its exoskeleton? Is it molding, molting, melting, or trying to drive you crazy? answer is molting. In biology, molting, spelled with a U in British English or without a U in American English, is also known as sloughing, I think I'm saying that right, shedding, or in many invertebrates, ecdysis, is the manner in which an animal routinely casts off a part of its body, often but not always an outer layer or covering, either at a specific time of the year or at specific points in its life cycle. Hermit crabs molt underground most of the time. Another fun fact about molting in hermit crabs is they molt their entire body, from the very tip of their abdomen all the way to the tip of their antenna, and including their gut tract. Molting is an incredibly dangerous activity for all animals that have to go through it. I read a statistic that it is believed that 80% of arthropod death occurs during molt. And our hermit crabs molt a lot. Some animals only molt like once a year. And our babies, the little babies, are molting like almost weekly. And then when you get John's age of 45 years, 46 years in captivity, he molted about every 18 months, but still it was a major undertaking for him. And hermit crabs do not have a terminal molt. They continue to molt as long as they are alive. What other crustacean in the Cynobitidae family What other crustacean is the Cynobitidae family's closest biological cousin? Is it the lobster, the crayfish, Sebastian, or the king crab? And the answer is king crab. And my source for that little bit of information is Shrimp, Lobsters, and Crabs: Their Fascinating Life History by Dorothy Bliss. In the upper left, we see the king crab. Then in the middle, we have our adorable Cynobita clypetus, and then a beautiful coconut crab, almost black on its back. Just a beautiful, beautiful animal. What is the common name for Cynobita perlatus? Is it PP, blueberry, lilac, or strawberry? And the answer is strawberry. What year was the first CrabCon? Was it 2019, 2020, 2021, or 1999? I hope you guys are enjoying these questions, just random stuff that I came up with. I couldn't come up with enough food related ones to like fill out enough of my presentation. The answer is 2019. And how many of you know where the first CrabCon was held in person? I'll give you a minute just in chat. The photo there is the lovely ladies of Crab Central Station. Well, two of them at least, Brooke and Darcy. Faith is not in the photo, but Faith did come. The whole Madsen family drove all the way from Texas to, I hope you guys have guessed already, Lockport, New York, which was Mary's hometown at the time. And it was amazing. I'm looking forward to being in person again. What do hermit crab owners hate? Brown frowns, also known as poop, feeding their hermit crabs, building a crab habitat, or pet sand. And the captive bred baby's favorite activity is to poop in the water pools the minute I clean them. And they poop a lot. The answer is pet sand. When all your crabby kids go away to molt camp. You guys can all relate, I'm sure. Thank you so much for joining me and for playing along with our little bit of trivia. So now we'll do a little Q&A session. You guys can put your questions in the chat and I'll do my best to answer all of them. This presentation ran almost the full hour, so we're definitely going to go over our hour. If you need to leave and go watch another presentation, another session, that's fine. If you want to hang with me and answer some questions, I'll hang out for a little bit and try to answer as many as I can before I need to move on to the next event, because I don't want to miss out on things either. All right, so I'm going to pause my video here and start answering some questions. All right. Hopefully you guys aren't like just like completely numb from all that information. It's a lot. Like, I just wanted you guys to truly understand what went into doing this. So if you come on the Facebook group and ask me, is XYZ safe? And I say, go check the list. There's a reason, because I worked really hard on it. We talked about this, and Stacy Bolt said, what about large print? I want to show you that the hardback book is large print. So our Stacy took care of us. Yes, she was a huge help. We spent so much time just going back and forth over this paper says this, but this website says that. So we had two different goals. Like, she was looking for the worry-free book. And this is what I use. And I was looking to answer questions and educate myself. And it started out as a small overhaul and then became what you see today. I know one of the questions, I'm not going to be able to remember all of them. So if you had questions in the actual presentation, you can start popping them into chat there. The first thing I'm going to do is I'll just bring up the master spreadsheet. And somebody asked me if this spreadsheet is available online, and it is not. And this might sound really petty, but there are some people out on the internet who would take all of this hard work, adopt it as their own, and start passing it out to other people and take complete credit for it. It's happened to me in the past, and this is a year of my life, so not happening. It's staying under lock and key. But I'll share it with you and just show you what I got going on here, because I'm a spreadsheet nut. Okay, can you guys see that? So this is on the first tab. I just have the key that I went over. And then this tab is probably wouldn't make much sense to you, but it was a lot of just test results that I compiled. Different compounds, and then there was the studies that went with them. Links to some of the more important studies that I used. The ones I felt like you guys could benefit from, I did put on CSJ on the feeding guide. Not everything is on there because, like I said, there are hundreds and hundreds of research papers that I read and sifted through. So there would be so many links on there. I don't think people would really read all of them. So I didn't put them all on there. So here's the tree tab. Looking at the tree tab, we've got 126 trees on that tab. The plant one I showed you has 342, and you can see I've got a couple down here that I need to go back and double check regarding marigolds and getting them researched and added into the database. Then my tab just with that screenshot. Then mosses. The mosses, basically all moss is safe. They've yet to encounter a toxic moss. Lichens, there's only one family of lichens that is unsafe, and it's the wolf lichen, or the Vulpecida, I think that's how you pronounce it, family Lotharia Pulpina. Oh, hide that. Then we've got a tab that's all the crop foods or plants. So there's apples, artichokes, cucumbers, leeks, sweet potato. Then we can go on to the algae and sea vegetables. And again, almost all of those are safe except this, the cyanobacterias. And that study showed that like the crayfish larvae were okay with it, but I wouldn't feel safe feeding that to my crabs. There's not a compelling reason to. Spices, so there's the spice list, and there's a lot of these. Obviously, you can see they're mixed because the blossoms are safe. They're in almost all the instances. The rest of it isn't. But you'll see the notes and references when you do a search on the database. And then, like I said, I got just like all up in my own nonsense and did some high-level animal proteins for you. The one poisonous family is the poisonous xanthidae crabs. I don't know how big this is on your guys' screen. Maybe it helps if I zoom it. And then I put the amphibians as mixed because there are some frogs and toads, etc., that are toxic or venomous or accumulate toxins in their body, and I didn't want to start researching every type of frog out there, so I did at least cut myself off and just called it a mixed category. Then I did a tab with invertebrates, including beetles, worms, isopods, and then the poisonous family of crabs is listed on here. I believe that's the last one. Yeah, that's where I started compiling them together to make the databases. Okay, so that's the master database. And when I update the database of the spreadsheet, I have to like go and rebuild the database and then re-upload it to CSJ. So if you have additions for me, I may not put them up immediately. Like I might wait until I have 2 or 3 changes to make because it is a bit tedious to make changes right now. That was the best software I could find that was free and easy for me to use. So if you know of, it's amazing that I have time to do anything else sometimes because I get in a hole and I just like, I love a good rabbit hole. But if you know of some database software that works with WordPress and is easy to use, please help me because I can't afford $150 a month to add 6 or 7 individual databases. And that's like, it goes from 0 to 150 a month. There's like no in between. And I just can't that's an expense that's not justifiable. Okay, so if you go to CSJ, Crab Street Journal, I know the title said Lycos, but if you aren't aware, the Crab Street Journal is the online magazine of the Land Hermit Crab Owner Society. And all of the care information that we use as the Lycos guidelines are housed at CSJ. So Lycos is our parent organization, our nonprofit, and then CSJ is sort of the flagship for care and dictating, housing the care library. So if you go to the top up here to the search box, is this screen big enough or got to go bigger? I can zoom. If you go up here and type in feeding guide, I linked to it also at the top of the chat, but for future reference when you're looking for it. And then it's called What's for Dinner? So this is the feeding guide that we've been using for a while. I have just added on to it and started merging some of the other articles into it like I talked about. At the top is the nutritional guide, which is what to feed and why based on the crustacean nutrition table. That's the table there with the requirements my foraging guide, which really has been replaced by this. I have not updated my little pamphlet. This is so much better. So it is still on there though, but I have not gotten that updated yet. And then where to buy guide, just like if you aren't sure where to buy certain things. This is the main safe food list that we share with everybody. This is the Google Doc. I'll just open that in a new tab so you can see it. And you can print this out if you need to. This is the one that almost all of us feed from. Over time, I will try to update this with some more items from the spreadsheet, but it's a lot of work. And I already did a lot of work. So it's coming. It will get there. But this list here will not go away. If you don't want to go and use the databases and search, and you just want to stick to what we know is the safe path, then you can use the book. You can use this Google Doc, and there's nothing really fancy on it other than the logo, so you can print that out and keep it by your tank if you want, or just get you the pocket guide. Okay, that wasn't for me. She's answering that. So here's some other articles that used to exist on CSJ, and if I retired them and merged them into the list below. I wish Courtney had better internet so she could be with us, because Courtney's background is in animal nutrition. That's her education path. She is like the expert of our community when it comes to food. She actually went to school for that, and I just self-educated myself. Okay, so we still have our collages that are nice for people that are visual. Those were created by Amber Miner a couple years ago, and for some people, they're so helpful to just sort of see your food categorized. And then now we're going to get down to what we've just been talking about today, which is the new list. And basically, that's all stuff that we've already talked about there. And yeah. Okay, so here's the first of the databases. This is algae, sea vegetables, moss, and lichens. So you can put in the category if you wanted to see. So in this category, if you wanted to see everything in this category that was safe, you could just put in the word safe and hit search. And then it'll show you all the things that are considered safe in this category. And then if I have a reference for it, that's listed there. Too far. Then we can search again, or we can move down to here's crops and spices. Searching by the scientific name, as I said, is always going to be the most accurate and effective, because the common name or alternate names, there may be dozens of them, and in different parts of the world they may be called different things, but the scientific name never changes. So you want to get the scientific name and search for it. I'm trying to think of so Emily, I'm glad you brought that up. I was just gonna say that that went right over my head that was a barnacle, and for some reason I saw acorn and was thinking tree, crabcon brain. So your barnacles, as far as I can tell, in a brief search that I did today, should be completely safe. If you got them at a store, you might want to boil them and make sure they're just clean, because sometimes when stuff is sold as decorations, they use acids or bleach to clean away the dead organic material in there, like when the animal died, so that it doesn't stink when you get it home. So you might want to just give it a good wash and soak before putting it in there. But that is one that I'm going to try to remember, and I'll add it to the crustacean tab in the databases. Did Christine, she said she found purslane, but did she get the scientific name? Of course, I'm just drawing a blank here. Let's see if we do elk in the animal proteins. So I think I have that under venison. This was another one of those things where how many different words do we want to use? There it is, venison. So see the alternate names. If I typed elk in the alternate box, it probably would have worked, but the database doesn't work that way. So you got to know with the common name or the alternate name, which one I chose to put in the common category and which field to type it into. It's still cutting off a little bit over here on the right. I'm going to work on fixing the website so it stops doing that. But you can see my notes here. And like on venison, I listed all the common ones and all the parts, the meat, organs, bones, marrow, byproducts, including their food, of healthy, unmedicated animals is safe. But know that wild game can also suffer from chronic wasting disease and other illnesses. Oh, that's just a definition of venison. Because, again, I'm a nerd. If we go down to trees, this is when we get a lot. So let's try maple tree. So then you'll see we've got vine maples, big leaf maple, Japanese maple, and red maple. And under the red maple family, the leaves showed that they were toxic to fish and horses. And this is related to the buckeye family. So this one is considered mixed. The toxic, the family is Sapondiacea. Let me see if I zoomed this way in to try to make it easier to read. But if you zoom it out further, you can see that the toxic principle is saponins, and the animals affected are fish, horses, and mollusks. So the mollusk is what made me, a mollusk is getting near a crab. So there is a potential for toxicity there from the leaves. But the other maple trees are safe. Let's try. Do I know what purslane is? Oh, it is in there. Look at me. I'm proud of myself because it's actually. So this gives you the safe category, its common name, its scientific name, the notes, it's high in oxalates, cook first, feed in moderation. And there's the reference for that, the family it's in. I forgot to put oxalates under the toxic principle, so I'll have to go back and fix that. Like I said, we're in beta testing. Does anybody have any questions? Hopefully that's sort of, now that I've showed you, so I went to, that's not the right one. Okay. Alkaloid, maybe? I'm trying to do like by toxic principle. This isn't foolproof, like I said. Oh, that won't be in there. That's animals. Alkaloids here. Nope, it didn't. That didn't work. If you know for sure what the toxic principle is, you should be able to search by that. But I don't know that you guys would necessarily be searching by that. But I don't know your purpose in coming to search, so I included that as a search option. Anybody have one that they want me to punch in and look up? Another, if you can get your hands on this, I highly recommend it. I ended up buying this off of Amazon or eBay. And it is an older book, but it's good. And I got this, and I literally wanted to take every single entry in this book and put it in the database, but that might take me like another 10 years. So this is called Insecticides from Plants. And it's a review of all the literature from 1954 up to 1971. So it is literally just a book of, it's very fragile. The binding is not good. Of the different plants and trees and what research was done to determine their toxicity. And it just gives you the research papers and the, like a very 1 or 2 line synopsis. Trisha, I think that I shared this as a PDF in the approved sellers group. So it would have taken me a long, long time to have added every single one of those. But it was really helpful to go through and look up some different stuff and some older stuff. And even though it's only through 1971, that's still a significant foundation to work from. So there's that. Another paper that I found interesting was because of the question about trees and whether or not those trees are toxic. This is volatile VOCs from wood. So it's volatile organic compounds from wood and wood-based panels, and then evaluating risks and mitigation. So that's like the off-gassing of certain woods. So like aromatic, like pine and cedar. This was not related to hermit crabs specifically, but it does sort of talk about how those VOCs are released from the wood. Another good one is the anti-parasitic effects of medicinal plants, part 1, a review. I don't know that I was ever able to locate part 2. But it has like charts. I'm gonna unscreen share. It has charts like of the plant families that have an anti-parasitic effect, and parasites being sort of like a mite, similar to a crab, an invertebrate. I think most mites are considered in the crustacean family too, or related to crustaceans, if I remember correctly. I don't know why my science is eluding me. This one might have just been anti-parasitics. Okay. This one was mode of action and toxicology of plant toxins and poisonous plants. Another good one that talks about why plants need toxins, how that works, neurotoxins. And then it has another, I like charts that just give me answers, so you can go and look stuff up on here also, and it tells you like its mode of action or the symptoms, what part is hazardous, the active principle. So similar to what I'm putting into the database. Thank you, Stacy May, for grabbing that ironwood one, because that name did not sound familiar to me. And then here's another one that is insecticidal and antifungal chemicals produced by plants, which is a review. Some of these, like, I have a lot on my computer, but I print out the ones that I plan on, like, that I want to refer to. And I had found these before I found that book. But, like, this talks about terpenoids and alkaloids. And so those are terpenoids, alkaloids, and phenolic compounds produced by plants with insecticidal activity. And if you are in the approved seller group on Facebook, I try to share what I can with you guys in there so that you can be working from what I'm working from. And Stacy Bolts, I know that you're not a Facebooker, so if you want any of this stuff that I have, you just have to tell me. This is an evaluation of monoterpenoids and their insecticidal activity. So when you're searching for the toxic principle, if it comes up monoterpenoids, and you're like, well, what is that? And how does that affect insects or does that affect my crabs? And monoterpenoids are known to show insecticidal activity and are currently being used as commercial pesticides or repellents. So if you see something with monoterpenoids, that should be a red flag. I used this one a lot, and this is probably the study that Stacy May and I possibly, I don't want to say argued, but discussed the most, because there was stuff on here that conflicted what she was finding. And this was just on trees and stuff in the Northwest. And I think their goal for determining this stuff was not the same as what my goal was, but there was definitely some stuff in here that, but I learned, this is where I learned that the heartwood, which is the center of the tree, and a lot of times that's where the bad stuff is at, and the older parts of the tree may be safe and the bark may be safe, but if it had some sort of toxin or risk, it was usually in the heartwood. And that is the biological screening of selected Pacific Northwest forest plants using the BS. This one is, was this another good one here, I think? Can you read it? Is it backwards to you? Because it's backwards to me. It's in the database. I don't remember if this one was what I did with this one. I don't see. Oh, yep. Isoflavones. Clearly shows that alkaloids, terpenes, including steroids and saponins and partially polypeptides, are potentially the most relevant for the aquatic environment. So, yeah, this was Comprehensive Toxic Plants Phytotoxin Database and its application in assessing aquatic micropollution potential. That's an exciting title. If you don't think so, you're probably in the wrong talk. And then this one is the toxic effects of ammonia, nitrate, and nitrate to decapod crustaceans. A review on factors influencing their toxicity, physiological consequences, and coping mechanisms. So one of the things that we use prime for is ammonia buildup in the water. We don't know that our crabs generate enough organic waste to elevate the ammonia levels to a dangerous place, but this is a good paper for just understanding how ammonia nitrates affect crustaceans. And then here, this was another one that I didn't include, but remember when we were talking about the microcystins and the crayfish larvae? This one is talking about the toxic effects of microcystins in the hepatopancreas of the estuarian crab Chasmanthus granulatus, I think. But that talks about the hepatopancreas is where they accumulate toxins in their body. Hopefully I'm not going so far over that Mary's going to kill me. I'm supposed to be actually running this show today, and not here I am. And then this is just a copy of our nutritional guide that's on the website. Any lingering questions? The wild crabs of St. John are coming up. Okay, thank you, Mary. Bless your heart. I didn't mean to abandon you after I committed to doing this today. And I'm like, oh, wait, I have to actually be on camera. It's a lot, isn't it? I told Mary that if she's fine with it, that this particular, my YouTube part of this can go live to all the world after CrabCon. I'd like to put it into the CSJ page so that people can just watch it and understand a little bit better. So, and I know some of you didn't get the video to play, so rest assured the talk will be available after CrabCon, even if you just have a regular ticket. This one is going to be one that we'll just make available so that I can put it up on CSJ also. anthocyanins. And she went and got the link to the article of contention. We had some really, really good talks, and science is confusing, is what I learned. That there are no black and white answers, and what we believe today could change tomorrow. If you guys don't have any more questions, exactly, Kelsey, exactly. You're welcome. I had fun. I kind of mentioned in this morning that part of my motivation for doing this was I was sent a book to review from an author in Germany, and he said some really crappy stuff about the hobbyist community, but there was some truth in his statement about our food list being based on other animals and possibly being overcautious. So I thought, okay, well, I can do something about that. That's within my reach I can fix that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being completely conservative with your pets. These are my pets, and I'm not going to feed them random stuff just to prove a point or not prove a point. But let's find out the who, what, why, and get some real answers and some real information that can help us make informed decisions. So we can, when somebody says, well, why not? I can now say, alkaloids is why not. And I did see Rita said that we'll probably still get questions in the Facebook group. Well, can't you just look it up for me? You can Google it. Google probably won't tell you the right answer, but you can you can Google it on the databases on CSJ. And if it's not on that list, it's probably something very unusual, and you now have the information to go do your own research. Yeah, for sure. Our food lists, the original list, there's nothing wrong with them. They are conservative. But again, we're putting that out there as information to trust. And if you're going to trust me to feed your pets, I'm going to be really careful. All right. Yeah, better safe than sorry. Absolutely. And Trisha kind of echoed what I said about trying something 3 times, and if they don't touch it, they don't want it. So that was her outcome on the dried lavender. We felt that the dried lavender was likely safe because the essential oil is the problem. Once it's dried, the oil is gone. But she said they just didn't seem to really have an interest in it. They didn't want it. My crabs, and this does not mean anything because crabs are picky. My crabs will not eat lentils or chickpeas. I've tried multiple times. I have a food from one of you, I think it might be Trisha, that has little red lentils in it. And every time I feed it, that's all that's left in the dish. It's the lentils. And I fed it multiple times in all 3 tanks, and they all do the same thing. Yeah, and so the uncooked beans may just not be appealing. I don't know, but yeah, I believe that they also do know what to avoid. I just don't know how much being in captivity impacts their natural instincts. I have tried crushing the lentils and the chickpeas. Yeah, nutritional yeast is a popular one in my crabs too. Yeah, the lectins are still in there. Yeah, who knows with the babies, and because it's regional, like with the elk, Like the elk that lived there and grew up eating that toxic lichen were completely okay. But elk from a different state died. So crabs that live in one region and are exposed to one toxin might be immune to it. But crabs from this island over here or this island may not be. Raised in captivity, are they going to have any of that built up immunity to natural toxins that the wild crabs have? I definitely posed as many questions as I answered. But it was really just for you guys to see how complex this just isn't. This isn't an easy thing to answer. It really isn't just black and white. There's so many variables to consider, and the more you dig, the more confusing it gets. Okay, I don't want to keep you guys. I don't think anybody has. Looks like we're just sort of chatting, and I don't want to keep you from the other sessions and the wild hermit crabs of St. John that I want to see. Bye, guys. Thank you to the Stacys for joining me. High fives to my Stacys. And don't forget to go get one of Maureen's aprons. Oh, if I pull it down, I bet Indy will come with it. I better not do that. All right. Bye. I love you guys all so much. You don't even know. Bye.